Okay, there we go.
Good evening. I'd like to call Property Management Committee to order. First order of business of approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to that effect?
Motion to approve.
Got a motion? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
This is a special call meeting to discuss different scenarios on planning of space for the future of our Rutherford County offices. I guess the best thing I can do is to start out. I had a lot of questions on, are we going to make a final decision tonight and so on and so forth, but I hadn't planned on making no final decision. All we plan on doing is listen to the different proposals and voice your concerns. And as I understand it, we got several proposals coming from department heads, so which way they think it should go. So all we're going to do is just take the information and voice our concerns and look at all of it and continue on until we work toward a final plan. I told some of the commissioners, you know, it took us 20 years to get to the judicial building, but I hope it don't take 20 years to get to this, but we're not going to be in no rush and try to come up with a decision tonight. So based on that, I'm going to call the mayor up because he's the forerunner of this project.
And, okay, Mr. Chairman, I think we bring up, we have two people from Grisham and Smith with us, so they can come on up here and get situated with us. I think have we met both of you already here?
We have reintroduced ourselves. Once again, my name is Adam Nicholson. I'm an architect with Gresham Smith.
And I'm Afton Mooney, an interior designer with Gresham Smith.
Okay. Like Chairman McAdoo said here, I mean, one or two folks have even thought maybe I'd already made my mind up on what we need to do, and I really haven't. I mean, I've found, after looking at this multiple times, so these folks have done a wonderful job giving us scenarios that present some really credible options. But I have sort of come up with a few things I think that are broader than just these options, that really are going to be critical to the decision-making process. So I want to just express those to you. And I'm a little bit hoarse for some crazy reason. I've been talking too much today, but anyway, this is not focused on any of these scenarios in particular, but I think these concerns need real considerations for the long-term outcome of what we're trying to accomplish. So these are in no particular order, all right? Several of these options include the probability of selling one or two or three of these properties that we're talking about repurposing or reusing, but selling them. And I have some real concern about that, in that we've seen a little bit of history happening here locally, and we know what the city of Murfreesboro has done with the purchase of that bank building down there. That bank building has been offered for sale a long time ago. They've even approached us about buying it. So properties like that in this downtown area are not easily sold, in my judgment. So, and first of all, these are just personal opinions, and some of your opinions would be even better and more credible than what I'm saying, but it's concerning me that we really have to put that into a serious thought process before we decide which of these scenarios we're really going to focus on. So if we put one or two or three of those up for sale, I really don't have any reasonable expectation that they'll take a month or 2 or 3 years to sell. I think it's a fairly extended period of time that we need to be focused on that and really determine if that's really true or not true. All right. Now, I really am concerned that we probably should not even start any renovation, more or less, until we've actually officially got these things sold. If we start this and move to another location and sell one or two of them and then build other stuff until we actually get money in hand or commitment in hand, I don't think that's good for the integrity and character of long-term of this square. I think the county has some reasonable responsibility, and I'm pretty sure where most of us are committed to doing our part in preserving the integrity and character of what's going on down here. And vacant buildings wouldn't do that. So we got to be sure we can move forward with some reasonable expectation of selling those. Now, they have put some what appear to be low values on this property, and it looks really good, $40, $50, and $60 for the 3 buildings respectively. And I don't have any reason to say that's not a good number, but the city of Murfreesboro paid about $1.5 million for that bank building down there, which has probably got almost as much square footage as our judicial building, and it's got a lot of additional space for parking, and otherwise they're down there. So I'm just saying that reflects maybe the real difficulty that it might be to actually sell some of these properties, even at these numbers. I'm not questioning the numbers. I think they're certainly low enough, and maybe they need to be more. But so I'm concerned about the delayed sale time and the vacancy that might be created, and I'm concerned about preserving the integrity and character of this downtown area. So I know some of us, it's idealistically, that's a good thing to do. We think that's good to move those buildings and move on to something we know we can manage ourselves with new properties, etc. All right. So that sort of addresses those real concerns. Now, past that, we're up here, those of us that are up here every day, see what a struggle it is for new little businesses to come in place here and be stable and have a long-term opportunity to stay here. There is a bit of turnover in our ownership of these properties and these businesses. So I think that's just another little bit of indication of the need that we really be concerned about the long-term stability of whatever we're doing. Because again, it reflects what's going to really happen down here. All right, I don't want to dwell on this all too much, but I just want to say again, I think we have a vested interest somehow in preserving this downtown, and if all this will work, and I understand it sounds really good, if we could get the right people with the right commitment, with the right enterprise to put in place, and with enough capital to do what really needs to be done, I think, yes, that would be ideal. But that's not happening in an ideal world, in a real world up here right now. Okay, even though we've got one of the best older historic downtown areas anywhere in Tennessee, it's a challenge every day to make that continue to stay in place. Okay, a couple of these scenarios. This is no reflection on you, Afton, or we can say it's all Steve Johnson, he's not here.
He's on the beach somewhere right now.
A couple of them, in the use of our 400 West Main property, putting a building on there, indicates that we need to buy another lot. One for $500,000, one for $1 million. You know, that may or may not be the right amount of money. I just don't know where the other lot is. I don't know where we could find one of those, to be honest with you. I mean, I think I was surprised, and all of us were surprised that the D&J just happened to decide they would be willing to sell for us to get that place to put that parking garage. So I don't know where another lot is. So those two scenarios, are dependent on that, getting those additional lots so we can put parking on them. And I'm really concerned about the lack of availability for choices to be made and for us to even find those properties, okay? So I don't know, that's in a couple of the scenarios, but I'm just saying that really affects, I think, the overall view of where we can go with some of this. Okay. There's only one or two observations I will make, and these are really not concerns. I mean, they've got a nice chart that shows a ranking and a rating of all these particular things, but the adjacency of some of these suggestions, and in scenario one, it suggests that we would put probation near to any number of other departments that are serving public constituents, and I didn't hear much support for that, but I really think that's probably not workable and advisable. So I said I wasn't going to talk about scenarios, but that one is the only one that really comes to mind. And I don't know, Adam or Afton, in some of these scenarios, maybe it's just in one or two of them, the continued use of the annex, it sort of indicates that the scope of the renovations and the code compliance and everything may or may not exceed 50% of the actual total cost and value of that. And I'm not sure about the codes, but it appears to me that codes may make us bring that whole thing up to complete current code compliance once it reaches a certain threshold of expenditure. So I think the annex renovation process is very problematic potentially. And that's just, again, another personal opinion. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to stop with that. I've said about all I want to say about these major concerns, but I don't know how we can really focus on several of these options unless we really get our arms around which of these buildings are sellable, doable, and is that going to work in the marketplace, and is that what's going to really keep us committed to what we're trying to do to preserve this downtown area.
You know, committee members got any concerns they would like to bring up at this time?
I agree with the mayor's comments about it being best for our downtown, for the county government to continue to have a presence down here. We want to have a vibrant downtown and downtown square, and having some government buildings down there offers some stability. I can see how you wouldn't want all the buildings around the square to be government buildings, but to have just 2 or 3 around the square would bring that stability, and that was one of my primary concerns. Now, of course, this is conditional on the department heads believing that that's a viable solution for them. But one of my concerns would be that if we sold these buildings, that a private entity either wouldn't adequately maintain them, or even worse, would tear them down, and then we'd have holes around the square that would hurt the downtown atmosphere.
Any other committee members?
And you don't have to agree with me. I mean, we need a real 30,000-foot dialogue here before you can drill all the way down, I believe.
Well, when our assignment was sort of to think about refining it down to some specific scenarios, my one concern was selling of the properties, because I had some of the same concerns that Mayor Burgess has stated. How do you determine what is a reasonable amount of time, and if the properties would be sold in a reasonable amount of time? Concerned about having vacant buildings for a long period of time, and then what would be our timeline going forward to making other decisions?
Okay. Anyone else? I think it would be feasible to open it up to the department heads, the one in the audience, because there's been a couple of proposals that has been given to me. Maybe some more of the committee members got proposals. Let's see what their thought is. And as we gather all this information, we can put it all together and see what road we need to take in pursuing the plan. So not any other committee members that have any input or whatever concerns, I'm gonna ask the...
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to mention,
Okay.
based last time, first off, thank you all for being back here and allowing us to get back in front of you to continue to discuss this. Yes, this is a lot of data and a lot of information that we threw at you last time, so we appreciate you considering that in detail and getting back together for this meeting. We left last time basically sending out all of this information to the department heads and requesting feedback, and also any of your comments in advance of this meeting. So we did receive some of that. That led to some responses via email, just to some very specific questions related within each department. In other instances, it led to us creating another couple of scenarios. So we did bring those. We can distribute those and talk to that as to how that addresses maybe some of the feedback that you'll hear. And so depending on what you'd like to do, we can do that in any order. But I wanted to mention that we have those exhibits.
Well, based on that, I think there's no objection from the committee that you pass that information out. Let's look at these two the proposal?
It's a lot less. Trust you to- So I think Afton will walk us through these couple of additional scenarios. They'll be up on the screen, but we also have the handout here as well, so you can follow along.
Yes, so this scenario 7 we developed in addition to the 6 that we had previously. And we received actually great markups, comments from the county engineer and planning engineering department and building codes. From their group, they helped think through another scenario which is similar to one previously that we presented, but this would be to renovate the Judicial Center, Historic Health Department, and Goldstein buildings, and then selling the annex and purchasing one new building, which we are referring to still the 525 North University building here. So we listed out in a similar manner as previously. The Judicial Center, though, would have Election Commission, OIT, HR, and Risk Management. And then Goldstein would have Building Codes and Planning and Engineering. Historic Health Department would have Probation. Historic Courthouse, the Mayor, Finance, and Trustee. And then 319, County Clerk, Register of Deeds, Property Assessor, and then the new building, 525 North University for Recovery Courts. And then I skipped over, but Annex would be sold in this scenario, and then 309 West Main still terminating the lease on this scenario. And we ran the numbers and looking at about 10 million, including the soft cost and contingency for this scenario. So, again, showing the diagrams and the blocking to support that chart we just reviewed. And this could be done in a number of ways, but we're showing one way that you could accommodate the departments within these buildings. I'm just looking forward to the breakdown for this is, we do see it as a feasible option. Received many yellows and some greens. So the time is consistent with a lot of the other scenarios, 1.5 year maybe if work is done concurrently. Parking, of course, probation, there's still possibly a need for more parking, and parking at the square is limited, but it's still serving the Goldstein, which would stay in this scenario. Public access should be similar to some other scenarios. It keeps many public-facing county offices on the square, which is Election Commission, Building Codes, Planning, Engineering, Mayor, Trustee. Adjacencies, again, here are the primary adjacencies are met, and secondary aren't necessarily in close proximity, but it's pretty consistent with what they're in today. And the phasing, the only, I guess there would be a displacement of those departments in the Goldstein in order to renovate. But we still think it could be phased fairly easily if you found that transition space. And then expansion capability that I think it's similar to others. We're meeting that square footage, or we're exceeding that, but you could consider in the future more growth at 319 North Maple. So this is similar, I will say, to scenario 4. It's just it's
Basically a
alternating
trade
from the
between
annex.
previously selling the Goldstein and renovating the annex so that it works in conjunction with the Judicial Center, and flipping that and saying that you would sell the annex to the mayor's point and hold on to the Goldstein.
That's right. Any questions on that?
Any questions?
The one thing that I noticed about that scenario on the health department side, whether probation lives there, is I think you have a deficiency of square foot means
That's right. For
of about a third.
the health department and to place probation in there. And so they could be, for their current square footage that they're in, it's comparable to the health department. This would not meet the growth needs that we have forecasted in the programming
So
exercise.
what do we do?
So we've discussed possibilities of, is there another site? There's probably different function that probation could have at some point if there's any kind of remote access there. But that's a great,
You're about 25% under your need for square footage.
Flip through
yes,
scenario eight.
okay. So then scenario 8, we were contacted, I believe and Mayor Burgess was contacted by the owner of 309 West Main, so we thought it our due diligence to consider keeping or not just leasing 309 West Main, but to purchase this property. So that is the reason for scenario 8. We're renovating the Judicial Center in 309 West Main. But this would be selling Annex and Goldstein, and then to build or purchase one new building. So the Judicial Center would have OIT, Building Codes, Planning, Engineering, and Election Commission. Historic Health Department is HR and Risk Management. Historic Courthouse, Mayor, Finance, and Trustee. 309 West Main would be purchased, updated, renovated for code update and tenant improvement for probation. And then 319 North Maple, we have county clerk, registered deeds, and property assessor, and then 525 North University still for recovery courts. And that cost is about just over $9 million, including soft costs and contingency. Not up to date.
I think all the plans up at this point have called for us to leave 309 West Main Street where we're leasing. And now Plan 8 has us
That's
staying
right.
there. I'm just curious, on its own, do we want to stay in that building if we could buy it? Or does it not have anything to do with whether we can buy it or not?
Oh, we can buy it, but I mean, the money here, is not unreasonable. Now, again, as to what Commissioner Push said, there's not enough square footage in there to meet our future needs, it appears. Now, Mr. King is in here, and he can address that better than most of us can, I believe. You might want to ask for his opinion on that.
I guess I was wondering if that building has problems in our plan other than whether we can buy it or not. I mean, even if we can buy it, maybe we still don't want it.
Well, it's a steel pre-manufactured kind of building, so, and it does have some issues that we need to address as far as heating and cooling, et cetera.
Yeah. We put a cost per square foot to get a number quickly, but you're looking at over $1 million
Yeah,
possibly.
they put
Looks
a
like it's right.
hefty number there.
You're putting in more than it's worth,
That's right.
which is the same thing you'd be doing with the Goldstein building. It's the very first exercise that you guys did with us, the
Yes,
analysis,
the
the condition
evaluation.
analysis.
Yeah.
The Goldstein and the West Main building were the two worst conditioned buildings of all we had. Of course, we don't have the West Main building, but as far as one that we have hands on, those are the two most costly or most need of structural and rehabilitation. So in all these scenarios, on the Goldstein side, you're gonna be putting in a lot more money than it's actually could sell on the market for. Is that a smart thing? I don't know. But I just want to point that out. You could sell it for, at your numbers from a couple of weeks ago, you could sell it at approximately $1.1 million, but it's going to cost you $1.8 million to upgrade. So the balance doesn't seem right to me.
And to piggyback off that, and just, I skipped this on the chart, but we're also, I know with probation, we're deficient in some of the scenarios, but we're deficient in overall square footage on this scenario at 92,000 roughly versus the 98 that's needed. So it'd be hard to say overall that would work, but.
Do we want to hear from Mr. King since he's the audience? Want to hear his opinion?
Give me y'all can stand here.
You stand there, either way. However you want to do it, you can come up here or whatever.
Happy to go wherever we need to go, as long as I have space. The issue at 309 is the heating and air, and then it's just the ventilation work. There were some afternoons at maybe 92 degrees, air conditioner set at 60. They just can't cool that building down. That's my only concern about that property. Plus, it's next door to Congressman Dejolay's office and a bank, so I know we've had traffic up and down, and I know we want to be courteous to our neighbors. That's the only other issue about that location.
So, Mr. King, with this $844,000 they put down here for a tenant improvement number, do you think, and of course on top of $166,000 just for code compliance, et cetera, is your building, do you think it's going to take $1 million, more or less, those two together, is to put it in condition where you could use it for its current intended purposes?
Yes, sir. I think if we put the money into it and it's fixed appropriately, then it could be.
But do you really think the 844 is too much or not?
That's outside of my, I don't know much about real estate, so that's outside of my skills.
Okay.
I'll defer to those that do. The only other thing is that square footage that we have now, we are at max capacity at current state. So if we expand our program in any way, adding pretrial services, or our numbers increase as far as probationers, then we're having to look for another site, or we're going to have to build up and make it a two-story type of building.
See, that's my concern with that building right now.
It's too small.
It's too small. So why would I want to purchase it, put that type of money in it, knowing that it's not going to handle what I need?
Be adequate.
So, okay. Any more questions on answers, concerns?
We've given it a rating, I will add,
Okay.
but it's probably one of the lower. So again, to screenshot for you to add in these 7 and 8 scenarios, just to get a glimpse at those.
And scenario 8 had 2 red circles there.
So that pretty much summarizes all of the new material that we created in response to some of the feedback that we received about, the ideas of maintaining the Goldstein and just what would we do if this property came online. So that was just trying to really address those comments. We would certainly welcome more feedback from this committee and those that have attended the meeting today to help. Like we said, this is a high-level discussion, but at the same time, anything that this group could do to start to narrow these scenarios down to where we're really focusing on things that matter and that are taking us where we need to go. That's certainly the step that we're looking for today. And that's definitely no final decisions, but what can we do to push this forward to give you all a meaningful report?
Sure. If we were to keep the Goldstein and renovate, where do we put those tenants for the time being during the renovation process? How and where do we house those? Because I gotta think you can't keep them in there while
Right.
you're renovating.
I would-
Even in a phase.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
That's not something that we have an answer for, definitively. Obviously, in May, the existing judicial building will be vacant May, June. So, is that a potential opportunity for, before, this is all kind of a domino effect, right? As you're moving people into that. Would that serve well as a temporary space to allow the proper renovation for the Goldstein? And then once they were able to get back into the Goldstein, then you could, I guess, permanently backfill the existing judicial center.
Seems like that would work at least on a temporary basis, because we're opening this new, huge judicial center. The old one has 30,000 square feet. The Goldstein building has 16,000 square feet, so it seems like it would be possible to...
Not a bad answer on the fly.
Right, right.
It's not ideal permanently, but
Right.
on a temporary
Temporarily.
basis.
And it's good that it's still public facing, accessible to
Ask
parking,
one of the people.
existing
Ask Mike Hughes
parking and
Peter
access currently.
Doug will
because
speak.
it's on this square as well.
Okay, I'm gonna ask Mr. Hughes and Mr. Paul and some of the department heads that's in the Goldstein building. If they would like to speak, voice their opinion. Just like Mr. King voiced his opinion.
Yes, sir. Mike Hughes, Rutherford County Engineering Department. I speak for the Engineering Planning Department and the Codes Department. We all love the Goldstein building. We love to stay. We love the character. Yes, it is an old building that needs some work. We love the historic aspect of it. In proximity, we're really close to parking at the city garage behind us. We're close to the Murfreesboro Planning and Engineering Codes departments there. We've got builders coming in and out both departments, going to the city and the county several times. We know it needs some work, but it is a beautiful building. We would hate to lose that on the square. We've got a lot of people that come in and tell us that they used to shop in the Goldstein building. They've got a lot of fond memories and they want to keep it, that presence there. And we're just worried that if we sell the building, it'll be torn down, something else can come in. There's all kinds of scenarios, but we really like to stay in there, and just for our departments, we'd like to stay.
And Mr. Hughes, this question that someone was talking about, this phasing and what have you, have y'all thought through that at all?
Yes, sir. We kind of like what Adam's saying, that we could, if we couldn't stay in the building, if we could bump election commission out, we could move in their spot. And while
We do have
while
a
parks
2018
are,
election next year.
we can move around and use, the space that we have while parts of the building are being. We thought about that, staying in the building and, just renovate parts of it and then moving to the other side and renovate that. So, or we could move to the old judicial building when it becomes vacant and work with that. But that's what our thoughts, and we took several pieces of the Gresham Smith plan and we kind of pieced together the scenario 7, and that's what we're kind of hoping that y'all will lean towards.
Well, it's great that they feel that way. Remind me, what was the biggest problem with Plan 1 where we end up keeping the Goldstein building and the old judicial building and the annex?
Well, in the annex, we had probation, and right next to it was elections, et cetera. So the probation people, which we have not wanted to have adjacent to
Don't want them on the
our
square.
public
That's the-
constituents. So that was the primary issue, I believe. And then on top of that, the whole business about this annex itself and the real extreme cost it's going to take to really put it in a current code position.
Is it appropriate for me to ask Mr. Hughes a question?
Yeah, I think so.
You were saying that you felt that the Goldstein building would need work, and we've talked about that. In terms of the dollar amounts that we've talked about, help me feel comfortable with the bones of the building.
The bones, their bones are squeaky like me, you know, it's got some age on it, but it's got, you know, relatively good bones. I think the original study had it, you know, fair to middling on several aspects of it. You know, their phase one evaluation where they looked at the heat and air, the structural stability, the ADA access. They were all, you know, in the decent range. There was nothing that I think red or anything like that for the earlier phase of the plan.
But what she's getting at, Mike, is what's the foundational structure? I mean, is it on concrete?
Yeah.
And then,
Well, it's stood the test of time so far. I mean, it's as old or as many of the buildings around the square. You know, it's in, you know, moderate to good shape. So I mean, there would have to be some work done on it. You know, the heat and air unit, kind of like Trey's talking about it. One side of the building's is a freezer, and the other side's a sauna. You know, so that's just something that we live with, though, and it's part of the character of the building.
So if we just look quickly at the at that building evaluation, we broke each of those into 3 categories, one being life safety and code compliance, one being structure, and one being building systems. So for the life safety and code compliance and the building systems, both of those received a red score. We could go back through here and I can give you some of the highlights of that, and the structure being yellow. The structure, we noted two items there, that the roof would need some significant repair due to some areas that currently experience some ponding. And I think one of the other main items from a structural standpoint is that the floors are not quite aligned between each of these structures. So there's certainly some repair to do that there. In terms of the life safety and codes, you know, a lot of these things are pretty minor in terms of the guardrails and handrails and things of that nature. We've talked a little bit about travel distances from egress standpoints. I feel like those could certainly be worked out if a proper renovation were done. There are things like elevator machine rooms and enclosures that would need some work, and some issues about, you know, actually accessing some of these building spaces from an ADA standpoint. So, you know, it's certainly something that would require a decent amount of work, but, you know, not saying that it's not feasible. But I think that's
But they're like two red lights.
that's
right there.
really, I think, why in the assessments you start to see some of those elevated costs that we're describing for that building. And don't get us wrong, as one of our main goals of this whole study is to keep the integrity of the square, right? So we certainly agree that the Goldstein building is a beautiful building. It holds the corner well on the square, so you certainly wouldn't want to see something like that disappear. But, you know, just want to make sure that everyone, as we try to elevate the level of quality across the board for county office space, you know, the types of repairs that it really will require to achieve those things.
Have I missed something on either one of these last scenarios that really haven't addressed the parking situation adequately?
well, we've addressed that a little bit today. They haven't, but let Mr. DeMosa explain to you the parking on the square and the code requirements, please, if that's okay.
Okay, yes, thank you. Of course, as you know, in the middle of the downtown area, of course, we're within the city limits of Murfreesboro, so their zoning rules and regulations we'd have to adhere to those. Most the property on the square, all those properties on the square are zoned what's called CBD, Central Business District. There are no parking requirements for any of the businesses, government, whatever use there is, there's a parking exemption for that. Basically, the public parking that's available is theirs, first come, first served. If our buildings were to be sold, somebody would have to come, and someone would come and buy them, they would not be required to put any additional parking down. So if somebody were to come, and multifamily uses are permitted in the CBD. Now, as far as the density, I'm not sure how that all works out, but when you take into account if they don't have to provide parking, there's already a limited finite amount of parking around the square, that may become an issue. I know that Murfreesboro City is in the process of doing a parking study of their 2035 plan, as well as some downtown plans that they've done, have made recommendations of, additional parking facilities will be required at some point. I'm not going to speak for how that plan's going to come out. That's their plan, not ours, but I know that's something that they're engaged in right now. So does that answer your question, member?
What the parking that's here is all that's required. They don't have to increase the parking if they change the use of the property from government to something else. It's whatever's here is acceptable. Grandfathered, you might say. But you move a block or two away from this central business district, it is required. You move
right.
down to
You're,
400 West Main, we've got a...
Your 309 West Main, I believe, is actually still in the CBD, if I'm not mistaken. I may be wrong, but...
400 is not.
Right, those, right. 309 is still in that
Our lot on
CBD.
400 West Main
Right.
is not in this grandfather
Right,
district.
it is.
Okay.
It is right there on the threshold. of it.
We have to provide whatever the code book says based on square footage.
We should get some relief on the parking when the city moves into the new police headquarters due to the fact that the garage.
And that will help the parking in that current garage,
So
yes, sir.
that would help your situation there. You're talking about the parking and everything for your.
We're not hurting for parking now.
Yeah.
We.
I mean for the public, for.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Right. And it's readily available.
I believe Election Commissioner Farley would like to speak.
Yeah, just a couple things on the scenario 7. Talks about phase-in, displacing. 2018, we did have 3 elections, so early voting would be interrupted. So as far as an off election or off year, an odd number year would be the best time for us to be relocated, because we can consolidate quite a bit of our space during that time. But there's a considerable amount of square footage that we have early voting that goes on. So you're looking at probably 65 to about 80 days of time frame of early voting throughout the year. So that's going to be a considerable amount by the time you do the prep, set up, conduct early voting, and then of course the election day process. So that was a big concern. Also, too, on option 7, it does split between level 1 and level 2, which, I mean, from an efficiency standpoint, but all the other plans had all on level 1. So I was kind of curious why that specific plan was actually split between two different levels.
So, it's a good question. With this judicial center, we can try to maximize for most floors. If it's a single tenant, we can use the corridor as usable square footage. On the first level, though, we may not be able to, depending on your egress paths. So it's possible that you could fit all on the first floor, your square footage, depending on secured point entry. But that's what we're showing on this, and there might be another scenario where...
Scenario 1 puts them in 2 floors, 1 and 2.
But is there one,
So I guess I missed that on the second, on those 2, and going through and looking at that. I don't know what I would put up there. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Because
to address, yeah, and my thought would be that you have the elevator at the front and possibly utilizing the one at the back that's currently the freight for service and prisoner passenger elevator. So you could have maybe some office space or a separate meeting space up there as part of the programming, and be able to use the elevator to access your first floor.
But where we try to, duplicate uses and stuff, so that would probably eliminate some of that. So so.
Right. You could possibly fit into that first floor.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I would probably want to look initially to see if we can get it all in there, but, and again, the 5-year growth plan, it may cause us to need to do that. But my main concern is, and we're pretty flexible, we can go, I think based on our need, dealing with early voting, dealing with ADA issues, dealing with, if by statute, that if you have a voting location that does not meet ADA requirements as determined by the voter, then by law, they can actually come on election day and vote at our location. So that is something that would be a concern of making sure that, so a first floor access to that point. This is our primary, and also where we have a lot of our senior elder voters that vote early as well. So, but the 2018 time frame that makes me real nervous with that, because it'd be hard to try to move. Okay, the first part of the year we may be here because of needing to shift around. So you have, the latter part of 2018 we may be in a different part. So you're moving, making them have to search and hunt for where voting would be conducted during a gubernatorial election year.
But even if everyone agrees that you're going to move to that first floor, there'd be no way on earth we'd be in there before 2019.
Or 20.
I mean, oh, you said 20. No,
I said or 20.
Well, and of course,
But I mean, take
this
at least-
election year,
19 will be
20.
okay.
My thing was is that they were talking about displacing in 18.
Oh, no, I don't think it'd be even possible.
You could start the construction in the judicial center, but not
Not
moving
move anyone.
until the following.
Okay.
It would be a very tight timeline to get you
Oh,
moved
yeah.
in
It'll be
2018.
So the phasing part here, we're talking about displace Goldstein and renovate. So that's not going to be conducted in the summer of 2018.
No. First, you'd be first. If everyone chooses that you go over to the judicial building, that work would start first, and you wouldn't move till it's completed.
Yes,
Well, I was
so
thinking, but Mr. Hughes, y'all were saying that, talking about keeping the Goldstein building, that they would start doing that. And okay, that's where I got being relocated out of Goldstein
No.
in 2018.
That was brought up, but then I think that could be,
Okay.
well, if we hone in on this
Yeah, I
scenario,
think
we
for
will.
our next phase, for
We're fine.
any of these scenarios that we, whittle this down to, that's part of our next study, is to get in more detail, to really dive in and start to show how these departments across that scenario really fit into these spaces, come back with a more detailed plan about phasing, taking into consideration things like you're describing.
I just wanted to make sure.
Mr. Chair, I guess my concern with scenario 7, is that you're starting out with lack of space for two departments. And I guess my question for, planning and codes is, it looks like it's 400 square foot difference, but you could probably make that work. But what is your anticipated growth over 10, 20 years?
As far as personnel needs?
Well, as far as space needs,
Floor
yeah.
space.
Well, of course, when we first did the first phase of this, Afton came over and met with myself, Mike, and Tanya, and we all kind of laid out what we had. Now, personnel-wise and space-wise, I mean, as the county continues to grow, so does the amount of work coming into our office. We're going to need more planners. We're going to need more engineers to look at this. So, I don't have the exact square footage. just
Well,
in front of me.
and that's okay, but I guess my concern, if we keep the Goldstein building, put all that money in renovation, and then 10 years, you need something else.
Right, well, and I personally think that, and this is something that we talked with Afton about, as far as the Goldstein building is concerned, of course, the way it's laid out right now, of course, the building was never meant to be used in the manner that's used right now. There's a lot of wasted space in that building. A proper renovation could open up a lot of areas and consolidate some things. We've talked about some things even have a common counter where somebody can come in, kind of one-stop shopping for codes, planning, engineering, as opposed to having a codes counter and a planning engineering counter. I think we could consolidate some things.
Share conference rooms.
Right.
And right now, we're leasing space to the state groundwater office, and there's no guarantee that they will continue to stay at that location. So that's potential space that we could grow into as well.
And so but the usable square footage is saying it's 17,500, but with renovation, it could be more?
Yes.
Or is that?
We might be
Are
able.
you saying it's not necessarily more square footage, right? It's just that you're just being more effective with it, I think.
Is that what I
More
was
efficient,
hearing?
yeah.
And I think this number, I'm saying this because when we looked at this scenario, Goldstein was, I think, cut out except for in scenario 1. And re-looking at this in actual renovation, you could gain some of that, what's going to Common Core, you can gain some of that back to usable possibly, but then you would probably give some towards, it might be a new elevator, another stairwell at the front of the building. These are, I think, ideal, but would be very good for the ADA accessibility, public access. So, but this number, it's an estimate, but.
Okay, my next question, I guess, would be is, with all these renovations in the Goldstein building, would that take away the character that
Not
you enjoy so
necessarily,
much?
not if it's done right.
I mean, of course, the outside, the facade,
Yeah.
we're not talking so much about that. I mean, I think that lends a lot of character just to the square in and of itself.
Right, yeah.
We're not talking about,
But the
that.
renovations in
Right.
the inside.
On the inside, I mean, yeah, it's a quirky building. It's like Mike said, as we get older, we creep just like the building does. But,
But that's part of the character.
right,
If
but
you
at
like,
the same
and after we
time.
renovate it, then maybe that's an insert and you don't squeak no more.
Well, and I think, right. I think, like Mike said, I think.
I've had surgery and I still
I think there's a balance to it.
Yeah,
I mean,
I got it.
there are some things I think that need to happen. It's just kind of a balance as to, are you willing to sacrifice maybe a little of that to get more effective use out of the building?
And going back to square footage, we have at least 2 rooms that are file rooms right now. We could move those files to the basement. We could scan them and create a digital file. We are moving towards digital age, and all our submittals and plan submittals and calculations will be a online submittal, so there won't be the physical space needed for additional files in the future.
That's all.
That's all you got? Any more questions? I got one question now. Since you're a county planning department, and we all know that the Goldstein building is not up to Murfreesboro codes, is there any way that you could talk to Murfreesboro and tell me precisely what codes that I need to do in this building?
You're talking from building code standpoint?
Right.
Well, I
It's
would
really-
defer to those who know the building code far better.
But
than
you could do
myself.
that easily with the
Yes, sir.
Murfreesboro City, because all I'm hearing that this building is not in codes with Murfreesboro and blah, blah, this, blah, blah, that, but you could give me some specific information on what codes Murfreesboro is looking for in that building. Correct? I think that's a
Well,
piece
much
of the pie
much of
we
it is
need
the
too.
ADA compliance and the exit ways and the
Yes.
stairway.
That's one of the things that we struggle with, is our mezzanine meeting room. It's not ADA accessible. So what our plan was to move that to the first floor to make it ADA accessible, so we don't have to worry about, somebody having to go stairs or take an elevator or something like that. So that's one of our plans, and that was one of the shortcomings, was our mezzanine not being able to have that accessibility. So
I guess I was looking for more than that.
There's
I was looking
also,
for,
as part of the assessment,
Yeah.
there's, it's not a comprehensive listing of all of the codes that you ultimately, but there's a pretty high level here.
it's a pretty high level, but I guess what I'm looking for is that the codes Murfreesboro may be looking for is per se, my fire on this material here and my asbestos or whatever, my electrical sockets and all this, codes that Murfreesboro will be expecting in that building. Look like I could, zoom in on that and have a better picture of what they're looking for.
Well, they did, Gresham Smith did go through a lot of these code shortcomings, and, the building is sprinkled. Some of the handrails, stairs have handrails, but not guardrails. Just things that need to be fixed, brought up to current codes. So, I mean, there's ways to, get around anything and fix anything.
Well, I hate to be getting around and then Murfreesboro stop me. But
We got connections.
got connection now.
Well, I personally, we keep that Goldstein building, I want it brought up to par,
Yes,
because I've been here for a long time, and we've talked about Goldstein building, and we put lots of money in it over the last 20, 30 years. And I think it's time for us to stop putting money in it, or getting rid of it, or do something and bring it up to par.
yes, ma'am.
Any more questions?
Are there any other more comments from the department?
Anybody in the audience, department head, like to have input?
Melissa Street, the Risk Management Director. I do have a couple questions about the proposals on here. Due to the size that it is a little difficult, is there somewhere that we can actually zoom in to see? I know you have soft costs included, which means that you are allocating for cubicles and office space. And one of the challenges that we currently have in risk management is the lack of privacy. And it appears that on some of these proposals, there would still be cubicles and an open floor situation for my staff. We support our peers in Rutherford County and the Board of Education. We talk to them about their health concerns, health issues, what they're managing, what they're dealing with. And the lack of privacy that we have does make it very difficult for us to protect that for our employees and to have those, detailed, engaged, involved conversations that we need to have in the correct environment. And so that is critical to us that we correct that going forward, where those staff that need to be in offices are in offices. And just like Mr. Farley said, I also have some concerns about splitting the floors in the renovated judicial building. If it's proposed that those, where we have our staff on one floor and then the other be used for conference rooms and things like that, that would possibly be doable. I know on one of them, it appears it has us in the annex, and then we also have additional space within the judicial building on the 4th floor. I'm not sure if that's an oversight on the layout or if it's actually intended to be that way. But I do have concerns, like I said, about the privacy and also for our retirees and navigating parking and getting to us in a manner that's easy and convenient for them. So is there somewhere that we can kind of zoom in and see what the proposed floor plan is or floor layout is?
So part of this study is still the high level to even hone in on one or two of these scenarios. So I personally have taken the information from your survey and plugged it into an Excel file and have a spreadsheet. And happy to review that with you as well, how we got to the square footage. And it's still, the amount of private offices and workstations have a different square footage allocated for those. So it's really one whole number needed for your department, and we've blocked it in to a place on the plan. It's a fit diagram at this, well, it's not even that detailed. So just to show apples to apples per scenario, but we haven't gotten into the detail of the space planning or test fits or anything like that at this point. So
I know that the historic health department does, it allows for the offices because they're already there. It just seemed like on the others that maybe they
it's an overlay on an existing plan. So we have not done any
I think one thing
space
that's
planning.
worth noting is that we've made assumptions about cost for code upgrades to buildings and for tenant improvements. And so that is essentially saying that based on the amount of square footage in the building or per your department, that we would be accounting for basically a full renovation to give you the furniture solutions that you need and the privacy. But in terms of a specific layout, trying to balance all of this, at this point, the specific layouts aren't there. But the idea is to try to cover the cost and give a square footage that's appropriate based on the information that we received.
Okay, I just projected that into the soft cost. You were to, at some point, you would have factored in.
That's the construction cost. The tenant improvement line is a separate from just code update on the building. Yeah, thank you, Adam.
There will have to be a very, very detailed set of construction documents for every move, for every department, and they have just, this is just the beginning of actually identifying specific needs for each department, so. They just pulled some numbers out of there and said this is how much it's gonna cost per square foot to renovate and bring codes to compliance, et cetera.
Hi, I'm Lisa Kroll, I'm the county clerk. And in scenario 7 and scenario 8, the way I see, and tell me if I've misread it, but is that the storage room on the second floor where you would split my office up?
Yes, that's the area.
Oh, okay. Well, while everybody is considering all this, I hope that they consider the amount of traffic that the county clerk's office we get every day. The end of the month, they're lined out the door, onto the sidewalk. Just keep in mind, it makes it difficult for the other office employees to get in and out of our office at the end of the month or the first of the month. It's now common practice that the 15th, they could be lined out the door. We've done everything we can possibly do to create and be creative with the space that we have. We're just busting at the seams. We have no more space to go to hire any more employees, to accommodate the amount of growth that's moving in here monthly. So please keep that in mind. I do think that it would be a challenge for me to have part of my office on the second floor and part of it on the first floor. That would be a real challenge for me, my staff, and what we're looking to do. So while you all are doing all this, please consider all that, what I just said.
Anyone else? What's their opinion? Right.
Mr. Chairman, Brian Robertson, IT Director for the county. And out of these 8 scenarios, there's not a scenario in which the IT department is not removed from the historic courthouse that we're sitting in. So that's something we've had to kind of come to terms with, that we won't be in one of the coolest, oldest buildings in the county anymore. Our department grew out of infancy from here, as you all know, and we're in every nook and cranny. We're the entire 3rd floor here, and we have people on top, almost on top of each other. We have a situation where one person has to back their chair out for the other person to be able to even get out. We would love to see us go from the oldest building to a modern space, and would pretty strongly prefer new construction if that ends up being possible. We think that is most likely to yield a modern, collaborative workspace, and that's something that we feel pretty strongly about. Our employees would love the thought of being in a modern space, and would love the thought of being able to help further our new technologies and provide training to other county employees in an area that's near where our space is. So it just seems that new construction is most likely to result in that, or heavy renovation of existing space. The other piece that we're particularly concerned about is a shipping and receiving aspect of our department. Every piece of technology that comes into the county government is brought into our possession before it goes to its final destination. So even though in most of these scenarios, we were able to be put in a somewhat remote location because we don't have a lot of public ingress, egress like the election commission or others. We will need to make some special provisions for us to be able to receive the county's technology and stage it and prepare it for its final destination. And so those are pretty much our comments. A modern space and shipping and receiving accommodations, and just that's pretty much what we have.
I'm sorry, did you say in every scenario you was?
Right.
We're talking about 79.
We're removed from the courthouse, historic courthouse in every scenario, yes.
Except for the video room.
I thought you were saying that you're staying where you are.
No, I'm sorry. We are kicked out of the courthouse in every scenario.
Your preference is to stay in the courthouse or?
No, new construction would
New
be,
construction.
the scenarios that involve new construction would be our preference.
Okay, so what you talked about, equipment coming in, shipping and receiving, would be it on an upper level, like in some of those case scenarios, it's third level, top floors, would that be, how inconvenient would that be?
It makes it tricky. It makes you want that elevator to maybe be a freight elevator. It makes you want to have a dedicated space for FedEx and UPS to pull up. We'd love to have a dock of some sort. I don't know that the volume justifies that perhaps, but definitely you need a situation where you can take a palleted load and move it for staging it out. The one exception to that is the TV control room would have to remain in all the scenarios, and it's a space right behind the elevator on the third floor.
Well, how does your space needs here fit? I mean, are y'all okay currently with space, or is it?
Well, like I say, we are on top of each other. We have an extraordinary amount of equipment arriving because of the new judicial building. There's a room downstairs that if you open the door, you can't even walk completely into the room. It's supposed to be our shop area because there are items that have been shipped that are stacked literally to the ceiling. But even under normal ebb and flow of stuff in and out of the courthouse, it's difficult at best. It's a situation. We really, like I say, we're on top of each other, particularly on this third floor on this side right here. So no, it's not good. Most of the growth in our department, I think, at some point a department comes the right size. I think we're roughly about the right size, but in the last 20 years, we've averaged about one employee per year for 20 years if you look back at it. So I don't see volatile growth unless we begin to do something significantly different than we do with our technology resources. But there will be some growth. But even with the current setup, it's difficult, very difficult.
We'll be kicking you out soon.
Thank you.
Brian, I would like to add to your thought there. You're talking about the loading dock. I think it'd be wise if you had a loading dock for the next 20 years. Because look what you have done in the past 20 years, and we're looking at years to come. We want some of this to stay where we won't have to redo it. So if you think you need a loading dock, I think you need to include it.
Even if a particular building had its own loading dock, if that had proximity, even if we were up on a third floor in a new building at 319, for instance, a dock would be good. And that particular property seems like it would be difficult actually to place a dock. But
Just keep it in your mind.
yes.
And I added that to the slideshow at the front end of phase 2, just a note of that importance for the proximity to shipping.
Brian, are you gaining any space in the new judicial building?
Well, that's a good question. One of our worst needs has been taken care of in the new judicial building, in that the county's data center, which is currently underneath us, is going to be relocated in its entirety to the basement of the judicial building. There's a 1,000 square foot data center in the new judicial building. There was a sizable one that was going to be required even just to support that building, and we basically probably doubled the size of that and are able to accommodate all these servers that are in this antebellum courthouse. So we'll have 20 racks of space there, which is a lot of future growth.
That's huge.
But nothing beyond, there are no IT employees that we currently plan to permanently locate over there that aren't dedicated to serving the judicial system itself.
Okay. Anybody else got any input? No input? Committee members got any more questions?
I have a couple of questions / comments. With scenario 7, which seems to have the most discussion here, I'm still going to go back to the first point, which Anthony brought up. We're still 4,000 square feet in the hole at the potential probation at the Historic Health Department. So that has to be addressed at some point in time. Now, let me ask you, based on some comments we've heard from department heads, a few weeks ago at our last meeting, in one of the scenarios, we talked about adding potential 3 floors to the North Maple building at a rough cost of $6 million for 3 floors, 5 point something. Is it, this is unfair math, but if it's $6 million for 3 floors, is it safe to say $2 million per floor?
So that's probably in the ballpark. Seems reasonable.
Would we not want to at least discuss maybe seeing if it's worth investing $2 million to put another floor? Either, I think we were going to the side, we weren't going out, correct?
Right, right. These were new, that was a new building on that site.
Because that would get you approximately 16,000 square feet of office space, 1 floor would, at a cost of about $2 million. That may help a lot of the issues that risk management talked about in terms of privacy. It might be a nice overflow spot for those things we hadn't even anticipated yet, where one department gets really overblown over the next 3 or 4 years, and they absolutely have maxed their space, and we have to do some shuffling. I know $2 million sounds like a lot of money, but in what we're looking at, that's 15–18% of what we're looking at to spend. So it might be worth just having a discussion to still be thinking about adding a floor.
Well, and the other piece of this is, and I think we've kind of through various conversations have talked about this, you know, the dates we're showing on here are projected, you know, five-year growth, and you know that will be here very quickly. And so, you know, what is the vision beyond that? And if there is additional functional space that you can, like you're saying, build efficiently,
Right.
There's certainly some logic to doing that.
Well, and for instance, the Goldstein has approximately 17,000 square feet, so it's approximately a wash on square footage. You know, let's say all of this discussion as it gets legs and developers are starting to listen to what's going on the square. Maybe somebody says, man, I've got to have this Goldstein building because I want to do something really cool, and they throw this huge number out. Well, if you have a new floor on Maple Street that would nearly house building codes and planning, I know you like your building, Michael and Doug, but I'm just saying, that sounds like cheap space to me. And while we're talking, we might as well talk further about the potential of going ahead and adding a floor on that North Maple.
You have to.
For West Main, oh, sorry.
You have to look at adding parking in the parking garage as well.
The new parking garage.
Yes,
Yeah.
that'll have to be factored in as well, because they're short on spaces right now.
Which I believe in the scenarios where we propose new construction on that site, we included.
Yeah, but you included it for the 3 floors, I think, though, didn't you?
Right.
So we're only talking about a third of that need.
It may not, we would have to go
Yeah,
back and
we'd
look
have-
at that, but
yeah.
a certain amount of that parking was already
You also have
accounted
to
for.
consider traffic there. It's like, Lisa was saying that they've got so much foot traffic in and out. We've got that traffic as well, building codes. So we've got a lot of volume of people trying to get in the same area at the same time would be a bad case scenario.
Talking about scenario 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all in the one, same building.
I'm just saying, just throw it out there.
Yes, sir.
Make a discussion.
Were you talking about adding one floor to the current building?
Yes, sir.
And not building 1 or 2
Not
stores
necessarily
aside?
go 3, but
Just
it
1/3.
sounds like we may need the space for at least one more. One more floor of 16,000 might do the trick.
Did I hear in any of the conversation that there was a need or desire to keep probation separated from?
Yes. From recovery, or from,
Particularly recovery courts,
Yeah.
and I think in
And
general
other-
office.
and other public offices.
Yeah.
Well, so like, I think it was level scenario 1 had
that's why we didn't like,
kind
that's why we didn't like scenario
That's what I
one.
was trying to get at. I thought I heard that discussion, but it's just for the nature of the clientele, it's just they want to be.
Yeah, and I think I need some I may have gotten confused here. When we talk about 319 North Maple, Commissioner Cook, you're talking about building up, right? But what has been the discussion about
No, it's
building
a building at the side, actually.
Right.
to
So-
side?
To the side.
Okay, so that would be
Instead of
using
door.
that,
What, the-
where parking
The
is
parking
now?
to eliminate about 50 parking spaces
Okay.
to go to the side.
Which creates another problem.
Which creates,
So we, in that
how
scenario.
congested are we getting there?
We included the addition to, I believe in that scenario, the addition to the parking garage, so 2 more floors
And
to the new.
each floor has 100 spaces, so, we'd be losing 50, but adding 200 in that situation.
On the scenario where we're going to 4 floors, I'm looking to see what will we put there, other than probation.
That's on page 2. That was scenario 2.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple scenarios.
Yeah, there are a couple of different scenarios, and certain scenarios we propose a new build, a standalone building on the side of a certain height, and then in other scenarios, I believe we recommended adding 1 level. So it's not all the same,
Yeah.
but
Is scenario 5 where you're building a 3-story building next to the current?
yes.
Yeah.
And so that's the building.
So that's what he was mentioning, is that if you're building 3, would you not consider building 4 instead?
And my
See, what
question
we're
is, what
saying,
would
if we
you,
move all the
what is left to put on the 4th
This
floor,
side.
other than
It's
probation
going to eliminate,
or recovery?
well, it's going,
We're adding
yeah.
200.
So I like your idea, but I just don't
That's a
know
lot
what.
of
Well,
floors.
I know we've done a lot.
What I was insinuating
Of course, it's a lot
was,
of people,
if
too.
we did 7, don't go 3,
Oh, yeah.
just go 1
One
out to the
up,
side.
one.
I got you.
If you did 7.
If you did scenario 7,
I see.
you still have, you have 1 floor out to the side.
I got you.
At a cost of about $2 million.
Okay.
So that's 1 floor to the side, not 1 up.
Correct. Well, I think we could still go up.
Could go up.
Yeah.
Then you don't eliminate
Ideally,
one.
we'd go up and save the 50 parking spots.
Because it's my understanding that last month, the information that was given to me, if we go up 1 story, it would fit perfect, it wouldn't be a lot of cost but if we go up 2, it'd be more cost.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a structural limitation in what the building was designed for under its previous code and what it is designed for under its current code. And so 1 floor, it was originally designed for 2 floors under the previous code. Now, really only 1 floor would work under the current code. So that's really the maximum that you could add per unit. Yes, sir.
So I apologize if I didn't explain that very well. My thought process was on the West Main, the Maple building, not go up 3 floors. Just consider if we need space just to add 1 floor. If we did like a scenario 7 or something similar.
If we did that, then I think with the county clerk's office could, scenario where they would just take over say the first floor.
All the first
All
floor, all of it.
And then register of deeds could go up to the 3rd floor.
Better view.
You have a better view.
Yeah, we find it, my only concern would be structurally, the weight of the books that we have a lot of weight with all the books that we have in that office. And at one point in history, that building was hit by a car on the front corner. And there are cracks in the floor in my office. You can see it shifted a little bit. I'd want that checked before we move out of the 3rd floor, just saying.
Okay.
Then I'm okay with that. That sounds like a great plan.
Well, I guess I was just going to say that
That would be exactly what you need, John.
if at a broader level, there's interest in really focusing on new construction on that site, then it may be prudent for us to go back and show a couple of iterations for that site.
Well, the new construction would just be, scenario 7 would just be adding a
Right.
3rd floor, not the parking.
Right.
So when we look at these scenarios, then we have to be cognizant of the fact that sometimes it says expand 319 North Maple horizontally, and then in other scenarios, it's adding a floor.
That's right. And, those are generally, I believe our numbers are saying this, that it is less complex in terms of the construction to build adjacent to it, right? You have to imagine going back and adding a floor to this, you're removing a roof, you're really impacting that structure. So there's some costs associated with that could potentially make that slightly more expensive construction than starting from scratch adjacent to it. So I think that was to demonstrate that on that site, there are different ways to think about it. And yes, obviously, they do impact parking differently.
But the cost of finding downtown or near downtown parking for those 50 spaces you lose comes with a price tag.
That's right.
Yeah.
But could we be in there while you're constructing a 3rd story on that building?
Another good point is it would displace the
We would
current
have to move
activity.
out somewhere in the interim.
Yes.
Oh,
The whole building?
yeah, we all would. Because the heat and air, I think, is on the roof.
Not
so-
positive about.
I would not want to commit to that. I'm just not certain.
It wouldn't be fun.
I-
So you could go to the side
That's right.
and occupy probably 100% of the
Absolutely.
building. Yeah.
Right.
It would be inconvenient and noisy, but it could be done.
That's right.
Maybe those are things you need to look at, bring back to us.
I'm hearing that.
Anybody else? Any more input from the audience? Any more input from the commissioners? Got any questions?
Well, I guess
Go ahead.
my mind keeps coming back to scenario 5. And I know that the problem with that is the building code and planning would like to stay in the Goldstein building. And also another problem with scenario 5 is the mayor's concerned about how would this property sell downtown. And I really would like to see the county clerk having, while we're doing this now, plan for the future, I think they really need a full floor.
All the first floor.
So could there be a scenario where I guess if there's another building in the parking lot, then we're gonna have that massive parking problem. There's so many problems with everything.
If you add the 2 floors to the parking garage, so in the scenario where if you built out to the side of the building, and it takes 50 spaces, how many parking spaces are per floor on the parking garage?
Approximately 100.
100.
you'd
So
be
if
adding
you were
to-
able to add to that, that would give 200 spaces to offset the 50 spaces that you would use to build the building.
That's right.
That's right. That's
So-
on this slide right there about the breakdown under parking.
I see,
Roughly
I see.
that.
But why would you take the footprint away of the side of 319 when we're looking at a 200,000, population increase over the next 20, 25 years? Because then you're gonna be back to, okay, well, you can't put another floor on top, or you got to remove everybody from that floor. If you're gonna utilize that footprint, you need to go multiple floors now. Why you
Well,
get,
I think that's what I was asking for, maybe, is a scenario where it's a 4-story, the new building is a 4-story building, which would leave us room for growth on the top floor, and the county clerk could be satisfied way on into the future. And I guess some strong steel support beams in the restroom deep.
I think that's what they bring it back in.
Is that something?
We could,
Or put me on the bottom floor of the new
Let
building.
me ask Ms. Kroll a question too. I was just by there today, and today is what, the 10th of October?
It is.
And I had to go around enough traffic, I had to get over in the lane I wasn't supposed to be in just to get through there today. If we keep bringing more and more people into downtown Murfreesboro to get tags and things, the streets won't accommodate it. Now, so what are your thoughts about another, I would say, location located somewhere else for some specific sets of purposes, but at least take some of this traffic off of downtown Murfreesboro, lining up, and they're going to line up from now on. They're not going to change their habits. What do you think about the future of that?
Well, I'm certainly open to that. I look at Davison County, and she has 6 satellite locations, and her downtown office is her main office, such as what we would be creating if that's the direction we went in. I'm certainly open to having more satellite offices as the county grows. I think we're gonna head that direction anyway, but as of right now, again, we're busting at the seams. So yes, I'm open to satellite offices, but then we're looking at finding other buildings.
If we had a satellite office, we had a location for it, we could put you in there much, much quicker than we're going to get this other work done that we're talking about here today. So if we got serious about finding another location that's suitable, that could happen pretty quickly.
Without Smyrna, you don't even have enough parking.
No, I don't.
You don't have enough parking. They had to park on the grass and everywhere at monthly peaks.
We've been looking into that situation though, trying to address it.
What do
They're
you-
aware of it.
What if the new building that you were considering at 400 West Main, that you was considering for probation, that's 12,000 square feet. She's saying that she needs 10,600 for future growth. What if that was a clerk's building in a single building by itself, where you'd have all that you'd have the excess parking spaces, where the old jail used to be?
But we've got to have queuing space for this traffic that's coming into her drive-through windows.
No, that's true too.
But now.
That's what we've got to have
I'm
land for.
probate, so I have that traffic that goes from there.
So the traffic jam
Oh, the court. The
was
court.
more or less
Yeah.
the drive.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah, then you bring all the people down to the judicial building, there's even more traffic. And when that opens, we're gonna have.
Walnut Street cannot manage that traffic on her drive-through, even today.
So Walnut Street is at the max on the traffic right now.
I am also clerk of probate court.
Yeah, that's true.
So when they leave probate court, those people also come over to my office. We're looking forward to a short walk especially in the snow and the rain.
Yeah.
But a satellite office, and we can look into that, it sounds like a great idea to me.
Can you got it? Okay, you already have it, okay.
Oh, no. But a note to incorporate the ideas. I wish.
Well, I mean, if y'all decide that's something you really seriously want to consider, just tell us to start seeing if we can find a prospective piece of property.
We definitely hear the concerns, and obviously as you start to increase density downtown, it's more traffic, right?
Yeah.
So, if there
Need
are
to
certain
spread it out.
things that could benefit from a little more space because they are vehicular based, then that certainly is something that could be beneficial to alleviate some of the traffic concerns. So we can certainly add that into the mix as part of a revised or different scenario.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Anybody else?
I just had a quick question. You were talking about relocating the building over to 319 and putting a shadow building over the side of it going up. Is there any option that might include, since we are losing space, maybe including an underground parking? So that or at least building over top so that you're going up and you come in and you've got 2 floors of parking and then you've got the offices above.
Increasing the density on that parking lot, that is certainly an option. If I'm incorrect, I believe that piece of property is a planned development, a P&D. So I think there is some flexibility as to how that.
I'm just laughing. I'm thinking, do you really want them to blast all that rock out to put you a parking garage in?
We've been dealing with it. She's been with it anyway.
I know.
She's experienced it too.
Commissioner?
Do you think a motion would be in order that we give the mayor the leeway to start looking for something like this
Well,
would that be acceptable to you and Ms. Kroll?
It didn't cost anything to look.
no, it doesn't cause anything to look.
I mean,
but
I think we,
I don't think you need a motion to.
I think we need to be
I think he
proactive
needs
about
to,
it.
I think the man's looking every day. 'Cause I can remember, it took us a long time just to find space for the sheriff department.
Oh, yes, it's been 2 or 3 years, hasn't it?
Right. So
But we need to start now if we're
so-
serious about
yeah.
that satellite business.
Yeah, so the mayor, I
think
don't
that'd
think
be
we
the
need a
prudent thing to
motion.
do.
I think he'll be looking.
And I do need some help from some other people on where it would be, what area do we want to look at?
And I
Okay.
think they would need to be involved in
Black
that.
area,
She's
by
a-
the new car lots.
Okay, but yeah, that's a good idea.
That is a
That's the most
wonderful idea.
expensive property we have around.
Okay, never mind.
So
Okay.
if we had satellites, then the current location, the size
Would be
should be
okay.
adequate.
Well, yes, I have got to go somewhere, and I believe starting with the satellite office is a good idea. The storage room upstairs just isn't going to work. We got to have storage. I can't lose any, and that scenario just isn't going to work. So a satellite office will work well, but at some point, I think it's going to have to grow. On the administrative side as well, because not only do I have the motor vehicle department, I also have passports. I have the county commission books, minutes. I have marriages. My business tax. I mean, we're very busy. So that side of the office is also, it gets very congested. So we're gonna have to have more room regardless. But I love the idea of the satellite office. I think it's something that we're gonna need regardless if I get to take the whole first floor or not. I do really think that we're gonna have to have that.
So you're saying the satellite office should be maybe our first priority versus the whole floor concept.
You know what? Ben's, while we're talking about it, I mean, I would love for us to look at both of the scenarios, but yes, I think starting with the satellite office is a good starting point. But to keep up with the growth that we have coming in
I know
here.
you'll need both, but
Approximately
first
how
order
many
of
cars
business
do you
is
have?
satellite.
I'm sorry,
Approximately how many cars in the county?
how many cars?
200,000.
200,000?
I've got 245 registered vehicles last year.
245 last year?
Yes.
Okay.
Is the satellite just for motor vehicles?
I think it should be, if she can speak to
It's
that.
just for that, not for the other things the mayor's
For the passports and that type of thing. Now, the Smyrna office, they do passports, and they also do the car tags, titles, that type of thing. And I'd like to see us model after that one.
Okay.
I think you should accommodate all of it instead of just hone in on one thing.
That's what I was
That's what's called being proactive, you know.
Yes. It works real well in Smyrna, what we have going, the passports.
The
and
west,
that.
well, my directions are real bad, but the Blackman area, that's one of the fastest growing areas. I mean, everybody's moving out in the Blackman area. And like I said, the number of people moving in here every day, 20 people a day, 600 people a month, 7,000 people a year, you know, we're gonna outgrow it.
Yes.
Pretty quick.
Yeah.
Okay, any more discussion, anybody else got any input? I think we got some good information tonight, and for you to look at some more scenarios, on combining scenarios and bringing us back some more
Yeah,
information.
we're not quite whittling down, I'd say. But yes, there are some more things to consider, and we really do appreciate your feedback. You know, this is, I think as you said, you know, it's difficult. You know, as you solve one problem, you're creating others. So we're doing our best to try to embrace as much of this as we can, and come back to you with something that strikes a balance between all of this, and ultimately meets your needs for the future. So let's take a minute to digest this, and we will probably send back a summary of what we think we heard here, and move from there.
Okay, any other business? Not, I entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. All right, meeting adjourned.